Marvin Harrison Jr. has got nothing left to prove. Bo Nix is not going to be an Arizona Cardinal. And you are about to bear witness to the greatest mock draft in the history of mock drafts. Let's discuss it all.
You are Locked On Cardinals, your daily Arizona Cardinals podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cardinals, Alex Clancy here. Follow me on Twitter, Clancy's Corner. Follow the podcast, Locked On AZ Cards. Thank you for making Locked On Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Part of Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked On Arizona Cardinals, hit that subscribe button, man. Turn notifications on. Leave a like, leave a comment. You know the drill. Everydayers, thanks for being here, whether it be since 2017, or if this is your first listen to Locked On Cardinals, thank you all the same. Lot to talk about today. It's combine time. This is when, and I've warned you about this, this is when names just skyrocket up draft boards. It's wild how much movements there's been without any football being played over the last handful of weeks. It's absolutely insane. And, a lot of this will directly affect the Arizona Cardinals and what they do, not necessarily who they choose, but what trade back options there are, who gets taken before the Cardinals pick at 4, etc. This episode of Locked On Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more right now. New customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. So Marvin Harrison Jr. is not going to work out. He's not going to compete in the combine. And I don't know if this is something that surprises people, but it doesn't surprise me. And when you look at another name, Malik Nabers, somebody Brad Spielberger told me from Pro Football Focus, told me a couple weeks ago, he sees as 1-1A to Marvin Harrison Jr. Some have Malik Nabers ahead of Marvin Harrison Jr. on their draft board. This is why I tell people or implore people to not just look at one name that everybody's talking about 6 months ago and think that that's it. It's either Marvin Harrison Jr. or bust. Just let the process play out. Just let the time go by and actually see things before calling people idiots for saying that 8 months ago, it's like, it's got to be that guy or it's going to be bad for the Cardinals. Relax. Take a chill pill, if I may. You've got to let this process play out. This happens every year, and people fall into the trap every year early on of, if it's not that person, it's going to be a bust of a draft for the Cardinals. That's stupid. It's dumb to think that way. It's very single-minded. It's very nonsensical in the sense that maybe the next 60% of a year will have some sort of impact on the person that you want the Cardinals to draft it for. Maybe. And talking about Marvin Harrison Jr. specifically, there are guys who don't throw, namely quarterbacks, who don't throw in the combine. Caleb Williams is going to be one of them, which I think is a massive mistake. His representation is terrible, whoever it is. He is the poster child for, oh no, don't draft this player, regardless of talent. But we'll see. I could be wrong. I've been wrong, once before, I think. So, namely, quarterbacks won't throw at the combine because there's a couple different reasons. One, it could only hurt them. Or two, they don't have anything else to prove. And Jaden Daniels is an interesting one where it's like, he backed into the Heisman. He had a great year, numbers-wise, fantastic. And, he went from not being able to throw the ball at ASU to being a prolific passer of the ball and putting up, gaudy numbers in the air and on the ground. He won a Heisman because nobody else wanted it. There's no reason for him to compete because his stock will never be higher than it is right now. It could only hurt him. You guys like Marvin Harrison Jr., who got nothing else to prove. It's like, what is me running in a straight line going to prove more than what my tape proves? What is me benching 225 gonna prove? Look at the tape. Look at the quarterback play from last year. I don't know what else needs to be proven. And as a guy who's been suspect on drafting a wide receiver at all at 4, I think this is the right move. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what happens at the combine. This is for a lot of these players. This is actually interesting. I didn't think about this until right this second. It's like a paywall. It's like you read the first page of an article. Ooh, that's good. Let me read the rest. Oh, dang, got to pay for the rest? Yeah, that's where Marvin Harrison Jr. is at. I'm not going to show you anything else. There's no reason for me to show you anything else. I've already got you hooked on the first 500 words of this, hopefully, massively long essay, Odyssey. I'm good. And it doesn't matter. If Malik Nabers comes out in the combine, I don't even know if he's running. I'm going to get Caroline Fenton from Locked On LSU later in the week to talk about Malik Nabers. She came on and talked about BJ Ojulari last year, was spot on about everything pretty much. So would love to get, I'm going to get her on and talk about Malik Nabers because it's time now that this is real enough to where we have to do a much deeper dive on Malik Nabers. Because what if Malik Nabers is the better wide receiver? Again, this is why I tell people. Just because your favorite pundit says, oh, it's Marvin Harrison Jr. bust 6 months ago, doesn't mean that that's always going to be the case. So always thinking for yourself, maybe go on YouTube and just watch videos. I love doing that. People clip it up for you already. You just look at the highlights. You can watch it in a bunch of different ways. Highlights, lowlights, whatever it is. So Marvin Harrison Jr. not, participating in the combine. There are very few people where you can just say, who cares? For him, who cares? Doesn't matter. I'm surprised that any top 10 guys are doing it. But, you got those fringe guys who can really just oh, he's got that in his bag. A lot of times it's linemen, whether it be the Senior Bowl or obviously if they're not seniors or juniors at this point, you come in and come to the combine and you show your worth there and you can jump up draft board. Sure. A lot of times it hurts more than it helps. And with him, with that quarterback play, even though the quarterback's numbers weren't terrible last year, the offense just wasn't fun to watch. But if you're a Marvin Harrison Jr. guy and he says, you know what, I'm just going to start working out for the draft. I'm not going to do it for the combine, not going to do it for the pro day, do it for the draft. I'm not sure if you can be mad at it at this point, especially what he's shown over his couple of years in college. Locked On Cardinals, your team every day. The Malik Nabers conversation will be interesting. It's starting to unfold more. Again, I'm going to get Caroline Fenton on from Locked On LSU to give us, the crash course on all things Malik Nabers. Because listen, it's not just Malik Nabers. It's not just him. It's Rome Odunze. Okay? And Malik Nabers is only 6 feet. So is that something? And I know that it's okay. So having one 6-foot receiver, Michael Wilson is, 6'3", I think. Having one 6-footer is not the same as having 3 5'10" guys, 5'10" and under guys, like Rondo Moore, Greg Dortch, and Hollywood Brown. It's getting too close for comfort, but it's not passing that line that the Arizona Cardinals have really grown accustomed to since Larry Fitzgerald retired, or whatever, didn't retire. Don't get me started on that. But it's something that's going to have to be taken seriously at 4, especially, and I'm not ready to unpack this yet because we're way too far away. What if the Patriots see Malik Nabers as the better option at 3? Then what? The conversations will be had. And I think in that situation, it's more apt to say, what if Marvin Harrison Jr. goes 3? Does Malik Nabers go 4 immediately? Or are you trading back just because it's Marvin Harrison Jr. or bust? Again, I've talked about it a little bit. I think putting it on ice at least until later in this week after we see some more movement is beneficial because, listen, we could get into this, oh no, I've gone cross-eyed situation where there's so many different options for the Cardinals at 4 that you can over-evaluate it and over-number crunch where you don't know if you're further ahead in the process or taking a couple steps behind due to paralysis by analysis. But We'll discuss every option possible here. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. There was a report out, don't know if it was real or fake, which usually lends towards it being fake, that the Arizona Cardinals have taken a deep look at Bo Nix, and he is a viable option for them to draft at 27 overall. Does it make any sense? We'll discuss it next as you roll on here. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by FanDuel. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props. This is the time of year after the All-Star break where teams make pushes. And this is a perfect time to go in and look at the futures. Who's going to win the championship? Who's going to win MVP? Who's going to win Coach of the Year? This is the perfect time because there's so much basketball left to be played, and especially in the West where it's like any team could come out of the West this year. You want to put a little cheese on, the Wolves, who are the 1 seed right now, the Nuggets, who I think are the 4 seed, the Suns, who are down a little bit further, I think the 6 seed, maybe a little bit longer odds. You can do everything and more at FanDuel. Again, first-time customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official partner of the NBA. So listen, the Marvin Harrison Jr. thing, it's a non-story. Like, we tried every new thing that comes out about a what's set to be a top pick, who's set to be a top pick. It's like not all of it is newsworthy. This isn't like, hot off the presses, exciting things. I mean, yeah, makes sense. There's really no reason for him to show anything else. He's proven everything he's going to need to prove. Now, the Cardinals have 5 other picks outside of number 4 as their current pick setup sits. And 27 is a fascinating one. Depending on what the Cardinals do at 4 will really tell the tale on what they do at 27. Because I will say on this podcast, and I've said it, and this is my guy, this is the guy that if the Cardinals don't draft a wide receiver at 4, say they trade back, say they want to just stick and pick and draft Joe Alt because the reports out there keeping Paris Johnson Jr. on the right side. Troy Franklin at 27, wide receiver from Oregon, is an absolute stud. And, if they don't go wide receiver at 4, everything is on the table for every position, for every pick through the 3rd round. Like, that is the like, I don't know if I would be more excited or less excited if say they don't draft a wide receiver at 4. Say Marvin Harrison Jr. goes at 3. Nobody else on their board is really, what they wanted for. Say a team wants to move up and draft Malik Nabers. Say the Cardinals can get a sweetheart package to move back to, outside of the top 10 because the team wants to move up and draft Jaden Daniels at 4. Like, if they don't draft a wide receiver at 4, the rest of the draft will look vastly different, obviously, which could open up possibility for the Cardinals drafting Troy Franklin at 27, which is a personal, wish of mine. But say they do draft Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4, let's just say, or Malik Nabers or whatever. Keep it simple, draft a wide receiver, and that's it. At 27, NFL Rumors, which is a questionable Twitter account, they sometimes take liberties that they shouldn't, reported that the Cardinals have done a deep dive on a Bo Nix and that he's potentially a viable option for them to draft at 27. Now, before going insane about this, let's look at that as a rational choice, okay? There's like 2% rationale there, and there's one very clear-cut reason as to why. The quarterback position is the most important position in football, and we've never seen more injuries at the quarterback position than we saw last season. That's the rational thought at drafting a quarterback at 27. Okay? And that is a very quick rational thought, 2%, maybe 1.5% out of 100 as to why that would be a rational choice. Now, the other side to that, which is something that actually accentuates a segment I did, I think it was last week, there should never be a case where the Arizona Cardinals, if Kyler Murray were to get injured, would put the ball in the hands of a rookie. or a second-year player. This needs to be a big boy offense led by a veteran if it's not Kyler Murray. Kyler Murray's now a veteran too. So planning for the future is fine. You should never be planning for the future when you have your franchise quarterback. If he were to get injured, there's no world where a young man who has never taken a snap in the NFL should be given the ball if Kyler Murray were to get injured. Not where the Cardinals are now. And that's the rationale against it. And obviously, Kyler Murray's the guy. The Cardinals were a little like, it wasn't cringy. Apparently that's a thing. Given the ick, is that a thing that children say now, that kids say now? The Cardinals put out a tweet, their social media team, they've been through the ringer over the last couple of years. They've done a pretty good job. They put out, franchise quarterback, and they had a graphic of Kyler Murray. It's like, yes, everybody knows that he's the QB1. You don't have to listen to an NFL rumor tweet where they're doing a deep dive on Bo Nix and thinking that you have to overcompensate by putting out, hey, Kyler Murray's the quarterback, and he's going to be the quarterback. Cool. Thank you. Appreciate it. Understood and unnecessary. So it was something that needed to be discussed, because while as asinine as that would seem, especially because the Cardinals had so many other, they have needs everywhere. Like, there's so many arguments against drafting a quarterback at 27 that I almost thought about not even doing a segment on it, because it's like, this is stupid. But I think it's necessary because it's never been more of a rational thought than it is after the season we just experienced. Across the NFL. Now you need, just like running backs, two quarterbacks who can come in and play. This isn't the Charlie Whitehurst days. This isn't the Chase Daniel days where he was the most beloved in Chicago and wherever he was at a bunch of different schools. In Kansas City, he won a game or two in Kansas City. It's not those days where it's like they're like glorified movie stars. They make a couple $1 million. They hold a clipboard. They're the most popular guy on the team because there's no expectations because they rarely get in. Nowadays, you can't go from Aaron Rodgers to Brett Hundley anymore. You can't go from Aaron Rodgers to whoever the backup quarterback was after Brett Hundley. Whenever Aaron Rodgers would get hurt, their season was over. Look at what happened to the Jets this year. And that's kind of a different scenario because nobody expected Zach Wilson to be that bad. But you now have to account for if your quarterback gets hurt. Before, it was like quarterbacks would never really get, like Tom Brady had that freak ACL tear. Matt Castle came in. I think they went 11-5 and almost made – I don't think they made the playoffs. I think they lost the division that year. But, this is a different time where you need that safety net who can come in and play football, who can come in and run the offense and not lose 50% of the production. Because you can't just throw away seasons anymore. There's so much more at stake now because everybody's getting paid more. It's just there's more and more eyes on football every year. And it's something that, while all of those things are true, the Cardinals drafting quarterback at 27 is asinine. It's absolutely insane. Now, the reason why you can't actually think that it's possible is because, going back to Monty Osborne and Jonathan Gannon, ever since the first second they've stepped on the soil in Arizona, they've said Kyler Murray's their guy. That's what they've said. Jonathan Gannon loves Kyler Murray. Monty Osborne loves Kyler Murray. Jonathan Gannon said at his introductory press conference, very rarely do you have a team that's rebuilding who has their franchise quarterback. They came here because of Kyler Murray and other things. So hedging their bet by drafting a quarterback at 27, it doesn't align with anything they said. And listen, I know that it's been difficult to trust management with the Arizona Cardinals, and still is, with Michael Bidwell going through all of the allegations that he's going through and still refusing to answer questions and things like that during interviews. It's something that you've just got to accept. The not answering, not being accounted for anything. If they're winning, all of that stuff still massively matters, but not regarding football. And that's the lane that I stay in, unless something really bleeds in where it's like it needs to be discussed. That's kind of where we're at. And also, Bo Nix ain't dropping to 27. I feel like he'd be taken before then, which kind of makes this entire conversation moot. But I think it needed to be discussed. I can't see a world where the Cardinals draft a quarterback at all this draft. There's no reason to. Bring in a veteran, bring in Tyrod Taylor, and just bring in Jameis Winston and just call it a day. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. Are you ready for the greatest mock draft in the history of mock drafts? Let's just... Yeah, I almost erased it and started again because it was like, there's no way this is happening. But, I'm going to do it. So we're going to do it next. Locked on Cardinals, your team every day. This episode of Locked on Cardinals is brought to you by BetterHelp. A lot of us spend our time, wishing we had more time. Okay. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? And the best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and to make it a priority. I have trouble. I'm a workaholic, man. I work 16-hour days, and I'm constantly getting my parents, my friends are like, hey, you got to get out and just go do something fun. It's like, listen, work is fun for me. I'm building towards something. I'm building towards this, and in my, my other job as well. And it's difficult to kind of see the forest through the trees with that. But therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. And I struggle with this. Go do something fun. Go hang out with your friends more. Go on more dates, things like that, where it's like you got to kind of get out of your own head at times. And therapy can help with that. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapist anytime for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, final segment, Locked on Cardinals. Alex Clancy here. Thanks for making Locked on Cardinals your first listen, free wherever you get your podcast and on YouTube. Please go to the YouTube channel, search Locked on Arizona Cardinals, hit that subscribe button, man. Numbers are going up. Our family's growing. Thank you very much for being everydayers and going through the sludge of last off season and the grind. And these next 2 seasons are going to be special, hopefully, and beyond. But there will never be anything short information-wise to discuss. I'm still locked out of Twitter. I don't know why. I'm hoping that I will be able to get back in this week. I miss it. So, interacting is obviously going to be at a stalemate currently, but hopefully next week or this week, I'll be able to kind of get back in the fray. So Mock Draft Monday, these are all fun. It's all talking points. It's kind of seeing where other mock drafts are going, whether it be through, national media members or people, just like you and me, just doing it. And it's just fun to see. Now, if the Cardinals, if this is the draft that happens for the Cardinals, Monty Osborne should get a Pulitzer. But, it's just fun to discuss. So Malik Nabers went 3 in this mock draft, which is fascinating. Starting to see things shift a little bit, which is wild. It's wild to me. So with the first pick for YouTubers, for people watching on YouTube, you'll get to see this. First pick, Marvin Harrison Jr. At 27 overall, Tyler Guyton, tackle from Oklahoma, who's probably set to go in the late teens or very, very low 20s or high 20s. I still don't know. High 20s, like 21, 22, something like that. The fact that he dropped was wild. Chop Robinson, edge rusher from Penn State, who's set to go in the late first round, was there at 35. So the Cardinals take care of wide receiver, tackle, and edge. Third round, Xavier Legette is there in the middle of the third round. Oh, at the top of the third round. The Cardinals had the second pick in the third round. I didn't know that. Second pick in the third round. Xavier Legette is there. Brandon Dorlus, interior defensive lineman from Oregon, I took with the Cardinals' third round pick. I watched a little film on this guy. He plays all over the line, all over the defensive line. So you have a guy with flexibility there. He's got some spark. He's played snaps. He's been highly rated with Oregon, even though their defense wasn't incredible all year. I think he'd be a steal at 71. And then Blake Corum there at 90. Blake Corum ain't going to be there at 90. Like, let's be honest here. So the Cardinals get potentially the top, like Marvin Harrison Jr. say he's the top guy. Tyler Guyton is one of the top 3 or 4 tackles. Chop Robinson from Penn State is one of the top 3 or 4 edge rushers. Xavier Legette is a guy, even though he's a little bit shorter than people had him listed at while he was in South Carolina. He's 6'1", but he was an absolute burner in open space. So if the Cardinals can get him in the 3rd round and double up at wide receiver, so that's why I went through with this. It's like there's so many wide receivers in this draft, okay? And yes, if the Cardinals are going to go and draft a wide receiver at 4, why not make that a strength? The Cardinals have no strengths on this roster. Aside from, a quarterback, running back, but there still needs to be additions to the running back room. In a position group, I guess the only strength you'd say is Budda Baker and Jalen Thompson. And I know that there's some hate for Budda Baker. I don't get it, man. I still don't get it. Budda Baker hasn't had a good defense to play behind in 3 seasons. He hasn't had a cornerback room that's been rated a B or higher since he's been drafted. And all he does is go out and produce. Okay? So if the Cardinals do draft Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Nabers, whatever it's going to be at number 4, drafting another wide receiver in the 3rd round, I don't think is out of bounds by any stretch, especially if you can get a guy like Legette in the middle of the 3rd round or at the top of the 3rd round. And then you look at that. You've got Michael Wilson. You probably got Greg Dortch. And you've got 2 young wide receivers for the next 4 seasons. I guess the next 3 seasons because it'd only be 4 years is a 3rd rounder. You could have the best wide receiver group if they all work out. That's how you build a strength. And the Cardinals need a strength somewhere outside of the safety position. So, again, the mock draft, this would be an absolute homer. Marvin Harrison Jr. at 4. Tyler Guyton, there's no way he's dropping at 27. But if he's there, you take him at 27. Chop Robinson is not dropping out of the 1st round, most likely. But I got him at 35. Xavier Legette at 66, the Cardinals' 3rd round pick. Brandon Dorless, a very versatile guy on the line, defensive line out of Oregon, and then Blake Corum at 90. I don't think Blake Corum drops past the 2nd round. There's always a guy that's slated to go in the 3rd round that ends up going in the 2nd round. It's just, there's no way that Blake Corum is dropping. He doesn't show this incredible breakout speed. He's just not that guy. But he's a guy who will just kill you with 1,000 cuts, and a lot of NFL teams need that. Yeah, that's it. Alex Clancy, Locked On Cardinals. Remember, without you, there is no me. Don't forget it. I'll talk to you tomorrow.